Our next speaker is Breckon Jones. Breckon Jones is the General Manager of Experience Eye Care and a Board Advisor to Crew Mojo. Breckon is a global full-stack HR leader currently shaping employee experience at Eye Care, one of Australia's largest insurers. Breckon is also a board advisor to HR tech company Crew Mojo, which is a leading Australian employee performance enablement platform. He's designed innovative initiatives and has enriched multi-billion-dollar companies' missions to attract top talent and engage and motivate high-rewarding, high performance across across customer service within company cultures regarded the best in the world. The title of his talk is Connecting to People, Purpose and Country. And I'd like to welcome Breckon to the stream.
Well, thank you, Carl, for that warm introduction. And thanks to all of you who are tuning in live, but also if you're watching back in the future. And I think what I'm going to cover is actually very pertinent off the back of Carl's talk, particularly when he's been talking about working virtually. And Carl mentioned that the topic of my slot here is connecting to people, purpose and country. And it's quite fitting that I'm dialing in today from a part of our country in Australia that has immense local and global significance. And it's a place that I'm personally connected to. And I'll start in our uniquely Australian way by also offering an acknowledgement to country, which is a way that we in Australia pay our respects to the long Indigenous history that we have here of our First Nations people. It dates back tens of thousands of years. And I'm coming to you today from a part of Sydney, which we now call Homebush. And this is the land of the Wongal people of the Eora Nation. And I pay my respects to their elders, past, present, and emerging. And if there are any Aboriginal or Torres Strait Islanders on the call, I pay my respects to you as well. So this afternoon, my time, I'm going to talk a little bit about why employee experience matters and what employee experience really means. But I can only really speak from my own experience, and I can maybe back up some of what I say by referencing some of the research or by repeating what consultants tell us is best practice. But look, the short answer is that when it comes to employee experience in your company or my company or any company, best practice means nothing unless you can really work out what's best fit for your organization, for your people, for your leaders, and for right now. Now, one thing that I can say with a level of surety is that having lived and traveled and worked all around the world and in some of the biggest and the best companies in the world, it's experience of any kind that really matters. And experience seems to last a lot longer and mean a lot more to humans than things do. So let's take a trip and let me try and help you connect with me and to connect with this country that I'm on by also telling you a bit of a story. So I'm here today at Homebush, as I said, working virtually. I'm actually working here from the Sydney Olympic Stadium. So if you have a look in the background, you can see the Olympic Stadium there, hopefully. And you might be able to see a couple of young athletes floating around, or if you can hear in the background, there's a big athletics tournament going on. And I'll tell you a little story about why I'm here. And this place is significant for me. And the significance started around 25 years ago, at the beginning of my career, when I was doing sports psychology training for teams and for athletes in the lead up to the Sydney 2000 Olympic Games and the Paralympic Games, which happened in that stadium over the back of my shoulder there. And this land, the Darug country land, once and still owned by the Wongal people, this site, the Olympic Park, where it's now built, it's a mix of freshwater and saltwater country, as we refer to it here. It's right on the Parramatta River. Parramatta River is just over there, a few hundred metres. And that river flows to Sydney Harbour, which is world famous, as you know. And then that flows out to the Pacific Ocean, saltwater. So from freshwater to saltwater country. And the Parramatta River wasn't always called that. In fact, its original name was Baramatar, which means a place of eels or a place of water snakes. And around here, there's still evidence that this land has always been a place where people gather together, where they gather together still to fish and to eat and to talk and to have fun and to play. And it's a place where kids play. And that's why I'm here today. And I'll tell you a little bit more about that in a second. But there were lots of snakes around here back in the day. There probably are still some in the bushes here. and hopefully you don't come too close to me here. So the men and the women, they'd leave their young kids to go out and hunt and fish, and they'd use their knowledge of country, their knowledge of the bush and their surroundings and their connections to find a tree like the one that's just over there in the background, a she oak tree, it's called. And that she oak tree has these really spiky nuts that it would drop. And I grabbed a few earlier. Let's see if you can see them there. See these spiky nuts? Let's see if I can grab just one. Yeah, the spiky nuts of the she oak tree. Now, the reason that they're significant is that snakes can't and don't like to slither over those spiky nuts. So the kids would be safe when the parents went off to go hunt and fish. And for slightly older kids, 6, 7, 8, 9-year-old kids, they teach them to find a plant like this other one over here. And I picked one of these leaves earlier, and that plant is called a snake whistle bush. Dianella is the Latin name, but I'll show you what happens when you pick the leaf. And hopefully you could hear that. So it's a high-pitched whistle that you can use to attract the grown-ups if you're lost in the bush or if a snake comes around. But you have to know how to pick the right leaf, and you have to know to have that connection to country and to each other. So that little story was just to set the tone for why I'm here today, using my flexible work policy at the Olympic Stadium to talk to you and to work throughout the day, but also because my son's here competing in an athletics carnival, state carnival today. So today's a unique work and life experience for me, and it will no doubt pay me lots of memory dividends into the future. But I can do that because there is a level of trust between leaders and the organisation and the employees for the company that I work for. And that brings me back to employee experiences and why experiences matter so much more than things. So there was some research published earlier this year in the Journal of Human Behaviour, and it sought to investigate what creates the most meaningful work and life for an individual. And the research found that having valuable experiences in life, and that includes at work, a big chunk of it, is what creates the most meaning for people and their connection to work in the context of the workplace. And it leads to higher performing teams and to the most highly engaged and performing individuals within those teams. And what this research says and what it found is that how we feel makes a lasting impression, much more so than what we say or what we do or how we're rewarded. So think of that in the context of how much you get paid. So if you have a group of people that have a great experience as an employee, this can have a really lasting impression, particularly once they leave the company. And that type of connection and brand advocacy, that's something that you've probably experienced yourself. If, like me, you've worked for big branded companies like a Unilever or American Express, and now you can only ever buy one type of deodorant or one type of ice cream, or only ever get one type of credit card. That's the lasting effect of brand ambassadorship and high engagement in an organization, even when you leave that company. But let me share a little bit of a case study from my current employer, iCare. And as I do that, I'm actually just going to walk over here under cover because it's just started to rain here in beautiful Sydney. The sun was out before, but now it's starting to rain. I'll share a little bit of a case study. So iCare, all we exist to do is to serve the people of New South Wales. As Carl said, we're one of the largest insurance companies in Australia. We insure all of the big public assets in New South Wales. So things like public stadiums, like this one you can see behind me, public hospitals, the Opera House, the Harbour Bridge. And so we have a very strong culture and a very strong sense of purpose. And that connects me back to this Olympic sporting stadium as well. So the way that we shape our culture at iCare, it's based on service, as I mentioned. It's a mantra of service that gives the company its distinct culture, and it helps all 2,000 of our employees to connect their personal purpose to that of the organisation. The other part of the employee experience strategy that we have is to be laser focused on listening, continuously listening to our customer. And our customer in HR, where I work, is our people. And so we take that same customer mantra as we look after the people of New South Wales, and we apply it to how we look after the people of iCare. And our focus is to listen, to learn, and to act to enhance our employee experience. And we're moving from a series of, the traditional, very long annual surveys to ask about engagement, what do you think about your leader, that sort of thing, to more continuous pulsing in the flow of work. And our people experience, we're assessing in all of those different journeys through the employee life cycle, with the end goal to be able to aggregate that information and make changes and improvements. And so that includes asking our people about their experience of pre-hire, so when they're a candidate before they even start, through to their onboarding experience, how was your first 30 days, your first 90 days, how are you connecting with each other, through to the traditional engagement surveys, looking at whether people are willing to stay, or strive, and ultimately through to exit surveys to give our people, data and analytics teams, some insights around the sentiment of our people from before they start to when they leave. And that information is gold. It helps us improve processes, helps us develop culture programs, how we train our leaders, and also how we enhance our employee performance experience, so that feeling of performing at one's best and connecting with one's people leader on a regular basis, that's not just a box ticking exercise or a form filling exercise. And one of the other innovations that we have on our roadmap, it's to build out the knowledge centre of another member of our team, our HR virtual assistant, who also helps us to define our employee experience. Now, we call this virtual assistant HugoBot, and HugoBot is iCare's chatbot. He's a virtual concierge, and he helps our people navigate iCare on a daily basis. But he's not real smart at the moment because he's so young and so new as an innovation, but he is learning, and our people are engaging with that virtual assistant and teaching him as we go. But like that wider listening strategy that I mentioned before, the chatbot, that's a tool to gauge what our people or any group of people thinks that they need and what they need help with, but also what they're interested in and how they experience those workflows as they move through the organisation on a day-by-day and a year-by-year basis. And it's that virtual and that hybrid work environment in which most of us find ourselves these days, as Carl said, as a result of the pandemic. It's that environment that is almost forcing us and has forced us to build these sorts of virtual connections, and connections to not just people virtually, but also to robots and to chatbots and virtual assistants. That's just as important a connection as the one to our fellow humans or a connection to a country. So I've actually been paying a lot more attention than I usually would to digital employee experiences recently. I had a great digital immersion day actually last week with iCare, hearing from a bunch of startups in incubators and also from big players like Microsoft and Intel and even the Australian Space Agency about how we're likely to work in the near far future, where mixed reality and augmented reality and virtual reality, that'll all become normal and ubiquitous. And it'll shift the way that we think about work and our connections on a global scale. Just like we're doing today, where I'm dialing in. For some people, it might be 2 a.m. in the morning, but at some point you'll probably connect back to me in the future virtually. This is just the beginning, and it's interesting, but it's also very daunting when you think about what that future might look like, where you and I could dial in and there'd be holograms of ourselves that would project into a virtual environment, and we could interact with the stadium or with a product or a thing in real time. So with that future in mind and how this will change the employee experience yet again, I just want to leave you with a thought about how we can learn from the Australian Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people who've been on this country here, Darug country, and connecting to each other and to the land for the last 80,000 years. There's a lot we can learn from this Indigenous wisdom when we think about the future and about connection. And my parting thought for you is from an Indigenous friend of mine, actually, who, when I asked him, what can we learn from Indigenous ways of thinking and being, and what could I tell a bunch of people in a global conference? He said to me, brother, just think 7 generations past and 7 generations future. That's what our people have been doing for tens of thousands of years, and just use that thought pattern when you make your big decisions today. So I better get back to watching my son run in the stadium. I'm not sure if you can hear it, but there's probably a big announcement coming up that he's running his next heat. So I think I'll wrap it up there as an example of a digital experience leveraging hybrid work, and pass it back to Carl, I think, in time for a break.
Thanks, Breckon. That's terrific. Wow. So interesting. We living on Australian soil, or in First Nations people's soil, really for 50 years. I had no idea about A, the spiky nuts protecting children, and B, that you can pick a particular piece of grass and make a noise that woke my dog up snoring on the couch. So that was.
You could hear it. Oh, that's good. I'm glad. You can also eat. You can eat the berries on there as well, but they're not quite in season.
Hey, Breckon, you might be able to help me. There's, in terms of great, authentic leaders, there's a particular guy I suspect might still be at iCare called Matt Prowse.
Yes, he's our Chief Customer Officer.
Okay. So we worked together many years ago, and he's a standout. He was one of those people that, he's got all the time in the world. His ability to listen and actually empathize with your situation, it's really unique. It's very rare. And he used that really effectively through a lot of the diagnostic testing we did with him in terms of his leadership capability to demonstrate that he could form and shape teams being more customer-centric than other teams. So I'm interested to know your relationship with him.
Yeah, he's a good guy, and he's a close partner of mine. He's the one who's actually developed the customer mantra of listen, learn, act. So that's the strategy for how we engage with the people of New South Wales that we serve. And we take that same mantra and we apply it to our people. So we listen to our people. We learn from the data and the insights. But the most important part of that equation is to act and to do something about it and to keep doing things about it. And that comes from Matt directly. And he's a good guy and he's a good operator.
Yeah, it makes a difference. Well, Breckon, thanks so much for your time today. That's been incredibly interesting. I hope your son goes well in whatever event he's participating in.
Thank you. It's a 4x100 relay, under 10s.
Under 10s? What does he run, 12 seconds?
Well, between them all, they just ran a 57.8. So they're 1 second off the state record. And they can get that in the transitions with the baton.
Yeah. Fantastic. Oh, look, thanks so much again. I'll leave you to your day. Really appreciate it.
My pleasure. See you later.